The Timberwolves are a prime example of what not to do as a team. Last year, they ended the regular season on a high note, finishing as the third seed and looking like serious contenders. They elevated their game even further in the playoffs, sweeping the Suns, a team many considered the favorites despite being the lower seed. The series showcased an exciting back and forth between KD and Anthony Edwards, and it kind of felt like we were witnessing Edwards' rise to stardom. He sealed the deal with a standout performance, scoring 31 of his 40 points in the second half to close out the series. Next, they faced the Nuggets in a matchup that felt like the true finals. Despite going up against Jokic, who's gonna win a billion MVPs at this point, at least it feels like that, the Wolves held their ground and advanced. Then came the Western Conference Finals against the Mavericks, a series that was more competitive than many give Minnesota credit for. While the latter half of the series wasn't always close, the first three games were decided by single digits, proving that the Wolves were right there in the fight. Overall, their 2023-24 postseason campaign was promising. After the success Minnesota achieved, common sense suggested they'd stick with the core team, maybe make minor adjustments like adding depth or improving wing defense, especially after Luka torched them on the perimeter all series long. That's what I expected. But instead, they surprised everyone by trading Cat for Julius Randle and Donte DiVincenzo. What made this move even more shocking was the complete lack of trade rumors or a buzz leading up to it. Usually there's some chatter, but this deal came out of nowhere. Opinions on the trade were mixed, with many, including myself, being more excited about Donte DiVincenzo than Julius Randle in the package. I was curious to see how DiVincenzo would perform in Timberwolves colors. While he hasn't quite matched his breakout season with the Knicks, his highest scoring year, he's shown flashes of potential. I don't want to suggest that the Knicks traded him at his peak value, knowing he'd regress because DiVincenzo still brings a lot to the table. High value players are necessary to make a trade for Cat happen, and DiVincenzo fits that bill. In recent games, he started to find his rhythm and adapt to his new environment in Minnesota. He adds much needed energy and pace to their sluggish offense, thriving in transition. We saw glimpses of the New York version of him in games against the Spurs and Rockets, where he scored a season-high 26 points against San Antonio. While that performance was encouraging, there's still plenty of room for him to contribute even more. You can't talk about Donte DiVincenzo though without bringing up Julius Randle, so let's get into it. Everyone knew what the Timberwolves were signing up for when they traded Cat for Randle. It was a downgrade. The hope was that if DiVincenzo could replicate his performance from last year, it might balance things out. But let's be real, it's no surprise things aren't working out as expected. Think about it, the Wolves went from pairing Rudy Gobert, who offers zero floor spacing and is limited offensively outside of dunks, with Towns, one of the best shooting bigs in the league, to now having Gobert and Randle on the floor together. As expected, the spacing is atrocious. Jaden McDaniels is a below-average three-point shooter, Randle is inconsistent from deep, and for the first time since his Kings days, DiVincenzo isn't shooting at least 40% from three. The floor spacing just isn't there. This has also led to Anthony Edwards being unfairly criticized. A lot of people question his decision to take so many threes this season, but what else is he supposed to do? Gobert clogs the paint, Randle holds the ball too long, and then tries to attack the defense late in the shot clock, and McDaniels' defender is constantly sagging into the lane. This forces Ant to settle for contested threes because the gaps just aren't there for him to attack. And as a defender, that's exactly what you want, making someone as athletic as Edwards settle for jumpers instead of getting to the rim. It's frustrating to watch because this situation leaves a lot of potential on the table for the team. Strong drives to the basket could get opponents into foul trouble, leading to bonus opportunities and better paint touches that create kickouts. As I mentioned earlier, Ant often drives into the paint and kicks the ball out. If Cat were the one catching those passes for open threes, that's a win. But when Julius Randle is the one taking those shots, it's a different story. Randle has his moments, but consistently relying on him for three-point shooting isn't ideal. This season, he's shooting just 27.6% on open threes that are more often than not created by Ant's drives, a drop from last year's 33.8%. Compare that to Cat, who hits 41.6% of his open threes. Those same looks would be much more reliable with him on the team. When you see Jalen Brunson drive and kick to Cat, or when Cat gets open on a pick and pop due to defensive miscommunication, it's almost a guarantee he'll knock it down. So it's no surprise Cat is having his best statistical season since 2019 in his new role. For Ant, it has to be tough watching Cat thrive after being traded, knowing how much easier and more efficient the offense could be with him still on the roster. It's not just that the Timberwolves offense could be more efficient with Cat, it's their defense too. While Cat has never been regarded as an elite defender, he at least showed consistent effort on that end during his last season with Minnesota. Randall, on the other hand, has been lackadaisical. To put things into perspective, Rui Hachimura and the Lakers specifically targeted Randall as a weak link on defense earlier this season. Rui even mentioned on Randall's defense that he is just standing around, and this was during Randall's debut with the Timberwolves, a game that ended in a loss, with Rui having 18 points that game. This is alarming from a team standpoint. Rudy Gobert can't clean up every mistake caused by Randall's lack of effort. Every time Randall gets beat on a backdoor cut, Gobert can't always swoop in to block the shot. That's not sustainable defense. It's hard to believe that the Timberwolves thought swapping Cat for Randall would make them better. The Gobert-Towns frontcourt, while unconventional, had an intriguing defensive impact, creating problems for opponents. It seems more likely the Wolves wanted to move Cat's contract off the books. This aligns with what Gilbert Arenas once said about some organizations not being willing to spend the money needed to win a championship. And maybe the Timberwolves are one of the teams that Gilbert Arenas is potentially talking about, because their plan seems to hinge on financial maneuvering. Randall is earning $33 million this season, but drops to $31 million next year. They're likely betting he'll decline his player option in pursuit of a longer-term deal elsewhere, which would free up cap space. This could allow them to re-sign players like Naz Reid and Nickeil Alexander-Walker, while still retaining Dante DiVincenzo as a valuable piece. However, if Randall opts in, their strategy collapses. They'd then need to trade him, potentially attaching future picks to offload his contract, all while avoiding trading him to a conference rival. The organization appears to be trying to avoid a financial mess while resetting around Anthony Edwards, who's under contract until 2029. Their thinking might be, we have time to figure this out. Even if Ant isn't happy right now, by 2029, we'll have the roster fixed and he'll re-sign. But what if things go south? If Naz Reid opts out, DiVincenzo doesn't regain form, Mike Conley's production declines with age, and Gobert's massive contract becomes an even bigger liability as his defense falters. Edwards, just in that scenario, might demand a trade. At that point, what's the plan? Hold him hostage and refuse to trade him like how it seems Pat Riley wants to do with Jimmy Butler? The Timberwolves are walking a fine line, and their gamble could backfire if they can't deliver a roster that gives Ant a real chance to compete. The Timberwolves' current situation isn't looking great. They've dropped from being the 3rd seed last year to a play-in team this season. Right now, they're sitting at the 8th seed with a 19-17 record. The race for the 6th seed is tight though, and they're trailing behind the Clippers and Lakers, who are both on 2-game losing streaks. If Minnesota can keep it together while the Clippers and Lakers losing streak continues, they could actually secure a playoff spot. Still, it's wild to think that they're in this position just fighting to make the postseason. At this point, last season, through 36 games, the Timberwolves were 26-10. If they had that record now, they'd be the 2nd seed behind the Thunder. That's what life with Cat still on the roster could have looked like. But what do you think? Was trading Cat a mistake, and what moves can the Timberwolves make to bounce back? Tell me in the comment section below. Until next time, peace.